Good afternoon. Hi, everyone. Welcome. So today, yesterday I saw Fabian, and he was asking me about how this conference was going, what I thought about it. And I told him it reminded me of back in 2002 when Microsoft had acquired Navision and Axapta, and it was the beginning of what is now called Microsoft Dynamics. But there was a conference in 2002. Previous to that, I used to be Microsoft Great Plains partner back in the day. And there was this conference in 2002. And it was the first time that the European folks came. The folks from Axapta and Navision had come. And it was very much like this conference, young, and everyone was really excited. We're going to conquer the world, hot technology. But things turned out different. So this presentation is about my professional story. And it started off as a programmer in the 90s, programming ERP, right through to today, me presenting and recently launching our my new company, manufacturer called Nio Digital. So, this story starts back in the 90s when I was a young ERP programmer. They didn't call it ERP back then. It was purchase order processing and inventory management and manufacturing and maintenance and these things. But it was back then when I met and became friends with Saranjit, my friend. He's in the audience here today. And, we were working on, back then, what was called Windows NT, and this disruptive technology called Microsoft Windows. And back in the 90s, this was really disruptive. So, we were working really well together, working on projects. And it was like, in those days, it was IBM was the big, the big oppressive with the mainframes, and computing was reserved to, just those white coats and suits who could afford, big, expensive iron, as they call it. And then there was this saying, you don't get fired for buying IBM. So it was all about IBM, and Microsoft was this disruptive, and Windows was this disruptive force coming and freeing people from the tyranny of green screens. That was really interesting time. And in '94, Saranjit and I were working so well together, we thought about starting a company. But me, my mom is Irish, but I'm from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. And I wanted to go back to Trinidad, really, to start a family and start a company. So I did that, and that's why I'm coming back to what I said. I recall, what happened was we were developing software, and as I said, it wasn't really called ERP back then. You had payroll systems, and you had inventory systems, and you had GLs and accounting and so on. But then when Microsoft got into the ERP game, as it were, they kind of, with this promise of consolidating all the mid-market and bringing this technology to medium-sized and smaller businesses, with that promise, we kind of got on that bandwagon. And with that, we got away from programming and development. And we started just doing implementation and using these packaged Dynamics products. And then I went on to do SAP and Oracle, and that was good, but it was very stressful. In the end, I felt like I was, just when you get into selling commercial software for companies like SAP and Microsoft and Oracle, you've got these quarterly targets and sales calls, and because they've got to make their earnings for the stock market, and it ended up being really more about earning money to feed them, as well as my employees and the landlord and everything else. So, I would say we kind of got away from what really excited me about coming, back to Trinidad and getting into, software. I forgot to mention, when I returned to Trinidad, one of the things that I really wanted to do was to, use software to help contribute to the economy by, developing software, really, rather than consuming software, developing software. So, as I got into, selling and implementing ERP projects, we did about 200 or 300 ERP projects, using SAP, Oracle, Microsoft. I kind of got tired. So with that, I'll just take a pause and move on to Saranjit. So Saranjit, in the meantime, he went on to build a company really specializing in offshore software development. Saranjit being born in India, but although he's British, he did in those years, and those 20 years, built out, a business, a digital practice by doing what he called nearshoring or dual shoring, that is having, people on site as well as offshore and producing and developing and delivering software like that. Did that for a while, and then he started consulting, and he's presently with the European Commission in their open source office. And so now, just at the beginning of the pandemic, in January 2020, both of us had gone through divorce. We changed. I sold my business. I went to California to just get a refresh, and Saranjit had actually come over here. So we spoke, and we thought let's do something together. What we had planned to do 20 years ago. So we both had ideas, and Saranjit showed me open source. Now, up until then, open source to me, being a commercial software value-added reseller, we used to make jokes about open source. It was like a toy, right? That's something that students use, and you're not really going to put that into production, right? It's like a joke. We didn't take it seriously, and neither did our clients. But when Saranjit showed me open source, it was like, wow. And then I found Odoo. And that leads me to, I had a long-time dream to, really develop this economy in Trinidad. I mean, some background in Trinidad is a very small, tiny, 1.5 million nation economy, but very rich, relatively speaking, because it's an oil and gas economy. And so right off the coast of Venezuela, the economy has been very, very rich compared to our neighbors in the Caribbean. We've been very fortunate. And so now, with the transition to greener and more different technologies, then there's now a real need. So this is how Nio was born. Kind of looking at all the experience and problems, I would say, that we had in trying to develop and implement ERP software to companies in the Caribbean. This is some of the things we came up with, and it's really, I'm going to flip between these two slides because this concept called the digital business platform is kind of like my dream. It's my third attempt. I'd previously tried to build it using Dynamics 365, Great Plains and some of the components out of that. I'd also tried to do it with SAP, and didn't work out. It's this. So here is the platform, and what we've done is, again, let me go back to my dream, right? It's to help companies digitalize. And I remember in the early days when you're doing a presentation, a sales presentation to, let's say, a board to buy software, right? So you're the night before, the week before, you're doing the PowerPoint and the software, the system that you're presenting, it's beautiful, right? Everything fits together, it's perfect. So you're going to present this perfect software, but then by the time you get through the negotiations and then the implementation, it's nothing like what you had on the PowerPoint, right? It's this ugly Frankenstein thing because, they say, well, we don't have the budget for all of that, so let's leave this out. And my brother's uncle's son, he's a developer, so why don't you let him do this piece of the work? And we've got some old servers in the back, surely it can work on those servers, right? So you end up with what you thought was a beautiful thing, you end up with this Frankenstein. Then, the cloud came along, and it was like, wow, we don't have to go and build this. We don't have to implement it. It's there. In the cloud, it works. So you can just build this thing, and then you can have customers just come and use it, rather than going and trying to implement. ERP projects, as we all know, are really long and hard, right? So some of the things that we're doing is we basically curated a set of open source software. So in the middle here, this is Odoo in here. And then here we've got, Office, OpenOffice, and Copana, and some of those open source. But the real value is up here on the industry verticals. And we just got started with that. What we're doing is we're building verticals on top of all of this platform. And the idea is that, make it affordable. So rather than charging people, what's your project cost and trying to figure out, it's small, medium, and large. Everything that you want for 1,000, 3,000, or 5,000. Simple. And the other idea about rapid implementation, never a project starts immediately. Because it's in the cloud, you just turn it on. So there it is. But you know what? We all know it's much harder than that, right? Implementation is like it's like a change management project, right? So what we do is we get started by giving them it immediately. We put them on and let them start training. Because you know what? They're going to take months to get accustomed to the software. So Odoo's really good with the business game. We make our clients do the business game like a month before we even get anything started. Do the business game before you even get started. That starts with the change management. And then we give them the system with their data. We just load up the data, give them a spreadsheet, load up the data, give it to them. They've come fresh out of the business game, and they see their software. It's almost 80% done. Everything's there. And then we just spend the next 2 months tweaking it. And then we say, right, guys, let's go. We're getting ready to go live, and we get it done. If a project is going to take more than 5 months, then we split it into 2. 6 is the longest. The other thing was the other side of it. That's the technology side. What I want to show you now is really this concept about building an economy, right? A digital economy. So what is a digital economy? Well, it's just a fancy word now for, in the old days, it was selling software or selling technology. Now it's digital economy. Well, great. So especially now, Trinidad anyway needs a new economy. So what we see is that if you think about it like a flywheel with 2 sides in a virtuous relationship. So if you can prime both sides, give free software, then, okay, think about it like this, right? If you gave businesses, like 5,000 businesses, free software, like Odoo does, then they need help, right? Because although it's simple, most businesses, they don't know what to do with e-signature system, or even though it's simple, right? So you give them free software, so this now creates demand. On the other side, if we give free training through this digital academy, then you've got the skills. So what we're really trying to do is to create this flywheel effect. And the way we're going to do it is, we're doing it internally now. This isn't a product that's out in the market as yet, this particular thing. What we're doing is this foundation, we set up this foundation because what we want to do eventually is open source this whole thing and let the maybe the government or some other agencies take it to scale it to a national level. But the other thing is in the academy, we've kind of created You know, another experience I had was that in the years when I had this Microsoft and then Oracle and SAP reseller, we would hire people, train them up, bring them through the ranks, and then they'd leave and then compete with you as an independent. So, you know, all your years of spending doing that, and then, you know, so what we thought was, well, let's just do that from the start. So with this platform, what we're trying to do is not do implementations at all. With the Academy, what I want to do is to create like 1,000 implementers, right? Independent businesses, professionals, they can go and do the deployment, they can do the services, because you kind of need that, right? No matter how much you automate, you still need someone to go and handhold. So the idea is that what we want is produce completely, again, building an economy, right? What you need to do is just flood the market with skills and technology. And so open source gives us that ability, like all of this. It's just, you know, it's not my software, it's just curated, right? All this is available, just package it together and give it out. So the other thing was, you know, trying to visualize what is this digital economy look like. So what I did, I said, okay, I did some analysis. Trinidad is a small market, as I told you. It's 1.5 million, 1.3 million population, and there's about 40,000 businesses. So if you look at, you know, in the old days, they used to say that, you know, your spend, a company's spend on ICT needs to be between 3 and 5%, right? That was in the old economy. In the new economy, it needs to be 5 or 10%, even further if you're a tech company, right? So if you could imagine all the businesses in an economy, whatever that economy is, whether it's an island nation in the Caribbean or a town in Belgium or anywhere, think about that economy and what is their revenue. Take 5%. At some stage, they're all going to be spending 5%, right? They may not be doing it now. Maybe altogether they're spending 1% or less. But the potential, this is what you call it, total addressable market, right? So the total addressable market would be 5% of the turnover of all businesses in any economy. And that way you can visualize what that economy is, right? So in Trinidad, that's a $7 billion economy. That's a substantial percentage. It's like it's a little less than 10% of our whole national economy. Now, we're not doing that yet. That's the potential. And so it kind of gives us something to shoot for, right? You know, the whole nation. The other thing I do is this concept of digital intensities, really asking business owners, you know, well, how much do you spend? It's like a reality check, right? Well, I spend like, you know, because it's an easy number, right? Everybody knows what their revenue is. They know that they're doing 10 million a year or 20 million a year or whatever. So you say, well, 5% of that, what is it? And then think, I'm not spending $1 million in technology. I think I'm spending like half that or a quarter that. You know, it's a reality check. So there was one other thing, which is how do you make this all happen? Well, there's this famous concept called the chasm. It's a technology chasm. So what is this? This is a chart showing technology adoption. So it's how any market adopts technology. We all know it. It's a bell curve. What's interesting is that there's a chasm between, and that's a cause for, you know, you would have heard of you know, technologies that in the beginning they were really exciting and full of promise, and then they, you know, fell off a cliff, and you never hear of them. It's because they didn't cross the chasm. So there's a whole, you know, body of work around how you do that. But it's really about, you know, taking and embracing the visionaries and the innovators, the early adopters, and then making them making case studies. And showing, and you know, sometimes what we're doing right now, it sounds a little, hopefully it's not condescending, but you know, trying to find visionaries in the market and partnering with them, so that they can then, by becoming digital, outperform their competitors in the market, and you know, that's how the pragmatists or the mainstream market is going to come on board. Because when a company comes and starts to eat their lunch through the capabilities that digital is going to give them, then they learn. So that's on a competitive situation. In a let's say a not-profit situation, it's really about, educating the kids and empowering them and helping them build products and being able to create things. How am I doing for time? So I'll wrap up now. By saying that, this is us today, Saranjit and I. We've just started, let me just give you the update. We just launched Nio properly in August, a couple months ago. And, we're planning to, we're really excited to be here at the experience because it just brings me right back to, as I told you, 2002, when I was, in Minneapolis, it's the only time I ever went to Minneapolis in my life. That's why, it's weird. And now, the same level of excitement and opportunity, but I see now if I compare what Microsoft had with Dynamics and their product, and I compare what we have with Odoo, it's way, 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 way much, much better. If I think about what went wrong, because I would say that, some things went wrong with Microsoft versus now, there's so much promise. You see the open source in the community, really powerful. So with that, I'd like to thank you and open up if there are any questions. I'm available now. Oh, yeah, sorry. Very important. I've got some really important book recommendations. These are books that I would say changed my life. If you don't use the Audible or some kind of reading software like that, I also recommend that. That also, probably you guys are younger, but when you start to lose your eyesight, then having it, read to you. It's more than that, though. You're driving the car and you get a call, you forget about the book you're reading, you get a call, and then you put it down, and next thing, the book's back, and you're like, wow, it's like it pushes it into your brain. So that's my recommendations. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes.
You mentioned the mistakes that were made by Microsoft. What are the major ones? And what are those mistakes, the major ones?
Yeah, there were many, but I would try to boil it down to a few things. If I look back then, and usefully, I'm comparing that to Odoo. What they did was they acquired a bunch, it was like a bag of nails is what they had in the end, because they bought Great Plains, they bought for the market, right? They bought market share rather than good software. So they bought, nothing's wrong with Great Plains, but what happened was that, okay, let me just explain. They bought Great Plains and Solomon, which were big players in the US market. They bought Axapta and Navision, which were big players in the European market. But because Microsoft is an American company, the US software kind of influence overtook, and they basically crushed everything, really. Because that's why I say I remember about 2002. It was when we first met the Europeans, the guys from Damgard and Axapta. It was different. And then Microsoft just kind of crushed it with their commercial close. That's one thing. The other thing was like, Microsoft, although they are it's the open source thing. I think the other thing was having access to the source code and being open. That's what they should have done to get the adoption that they were looking for. I would say those are the two main things. Right, yes, legacy. So kind of linked to that was they were always remain the commercial part. They acquired all these Great Plains customers, and they always had to keep them, So, we always thought back then in 2002, right? We thought, okay, you got 4 products. and they were committing to maintain those. And we thought, well, this is Microsoft. They can do anything. No, but really, we were like, they could do anything. They're a billion-dollar company. They could, but you know what? They didn't. It's not about money, right? You see what Fabian has and he brought all those developers up and so on. That's what I saw in the Europeans, and they lost that. Any other questions? Sure.
Your software suite is based on different softwares, not just Odoo. And what's the reason for that?
Well, so it's really about the market that we're going after is the small and medium-sized businesses. And when you think about those companies, they don't have CIOs and tech gurus and whatever, right? Yet all businesses need to consume technology. They need AI, they need CRM, they need ERP. So what we did was we kind of curated open source products, put them together in the platform, and just making it available on a subscription basis for everyone. For that particular market. And it's really just a simple way by using a subscription, $2,000 a month or $1,000 a month, just get everything. And what we have is, we become kind of like, well, it's like outsourcing to a certain extent, because we have DevOps platform and consulting and all that, but just making it really simple for businesses to consume software. Yeah.
Hi, so I'm Saranjit, his friend working at the European Commission. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so what I saw happening in Europe with open source, and it's really fabulous. So if you look at northern Germany, there's a company called Dataport. Northern Germany regional councils have got together, pooled their IT with Dataport into one organization. So already there are savings, but they created an alternative to Microsoft, right? So it's email, groupware, everything, storage, the whole thing. Completely open source. And also CERN, the particle accelerator, they were users of Microsoft, and Microsoft decided one day that they're going to change the pricing structure. So they said, right, you're going to screw us? We are geeks. We're going to build our own stack. So they created the MALT stack, M-A-L-T, Microsoft Alternative Stack. So I saw this happening. And Lorcan was telling me that in Trinidad, it's Microsoft territory. Everybody's got Microsoft Office. And as the prices rise, companies are rationing email. They're saying, I can't give email to everyone. I can't give Microsoft Office to everyone. So I said, well, why don't you offer them what Germany's doing? So it's the primary thing that Lorcan's doing is Odoo, but there are some people who still need email and Jitsi and video conferencing, because there's no technology there at the moment. There is, but there isn't. Thank you.
Thank you, but we're open for more questions after. Thanks a lot.